Hey guys, this is a weekly forecast for March 8th through the 12th of 2021. Okay, we'll start off with the Usdjpy pair. This is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, ultimately we're targeting this pivot low at 101, but before that we'll get a pullback to 107, which I already hit, possibly 109, and then down to this pivot low. Okay, so long term we're short biased, in the short term we're long biased. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Alright, so we were long until the first target right here at these 105 gap levels. Then the second target of 107. And now we're looking for 109 as a final target. Okay, now price seems to be on its way there. There's one thing you want to be careful of, however. Okay, we'll go back to the monthly chart. You want to draw a trend line from this pivot to this pivot. Now this level is roughly at 108.98, okay, which is 2 pips off that 109 target. Now, seeing there's a possibility that price may get rejected a little bit here and have trouble getting through it, it may be wise to just take the profits at this level right here and not wait for that 109 static price to get hit. Okay, at this point, like I explained in the overview, is that we're going to start looking for possible short entries right back down to this pivot low now. Okay, but first things first, let's just see if the 109 target gets hit. Okay, alright, so let's go on to the Euro USD. Oh, and please subscribe if you like these videos, and please push the like button. It'll really help me out, guys. Thank you. Okay, the Euro USD, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, so this pivot to this pivot right here, draw that down. Now this breakout roughly 7 months ago was very strong, so we're long biased in the medium term. However, this price action over here is very strong short. And so in the long term, we're short biased right down to this pivot low. Okay, now there's one other thing. Okay, in the short term, if you recall last week, I was talking about we were short biased until this pivot low right here. Okay, so let's talk entries. Alright, so this is a weekly chart. Okay, so in the short term, we were short biased to this pivot low right here. Now that target was hit on Friday. Okay, now let me just explain why we were targeting that pivot low. Okay, so this was a strong short trade, and this is a weak long trade. And so as price pulled back, we're looking for opportunities for short entries right back down to this pivot low, right? Okay, now at this point, it really depends. So on the weekly chart, if a strong long trade forms, okay, then we're going to be in line with the medium term trend and be targeting this pivot high as a first target. On the other hand, if we happen to get a weak long trade that forms, well then still we'll be waiting for pullbacks and looking for short entries right back down to that new pivot low. Okay, so we're gonna have to see what happens on the weekly chart in the coming weeks to decide the bias for now. Okay, and just for peace of mind, possible levels where that long trade could form is this trend line right here. Again, this is a weekly chart from this pivot to this pivot. Try drawing that trend line. So we could be looking for this general area for that long to form. Alright, so let's go on to the Aussie NZD. Well, and I just put out lesson 8 of my price action trading course. It's on how to find legitimate head and shoulder patterns. And again, if you watch those courses, I think you'll have a better idea of what I'm talking about in these forecasts. So if you have time, please check that out. Okay, so the Aussie NZD, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, so we had a normal double bottom against a weak downward trend line. And so in the long term, we're long biased right up to this trend line as a target, or perhaps this pivot high as a target. However, on the short term, due to this price action right here, we are short biased right down to at least this pivot right here. Okay. All right, so let's go on to entries. All right, this is a daily chart. Okay, last week we had this short trade right here, which already hit its target. And so we're waiting for another pullback right up to these levels right here. So we could take another short right back down to the first target, this pivot low, and the main aggressive target being right down here. Okay. Now let me just explain why we're looking at these levels right here as a pullback for short entries. Okay, let's go over to the weekly chart. Okay, now on this weekly chart, you can see price is generally in this range right here. Okay, now this range is made up of two gaps on the bottom end. Let's see. Okay, there's one here, and there's many more behind this also. Now the top level, there's an even bigger gap. Okay, so let me just erase these. Let's go back, all the way back. And if you can see right here, that top range is made from this gap right here. Okay, now this gap being from here to right here. However, it's using this bottom part of the gap for the top part of that range. Okay. All right, so let's go on to the pound dollar. Okay, the pound dollar. This is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, so we have a weak double bottom right here. Now, weak double bottoms typically don't go its high target. So its high target being right here. We'll just duplicate that. It's generally in this level. Okay. However, it does add a little bit of strength long. So in the medium term, we're long biased. However, in the long term, we are short biased. Right back down to this pivot low. Okay. Now let's talk entries. Okay, so this is a weekly chart. Okay, at this point right now, we're looking at two levels for possible long entries. So one is from this pivot to this pivot, and the other is from this pivot to this pivot. Now price is right on it. We want price to respect one of these trend lines with compact price action. Could be on this one too. Okay, and we'll see if we could get a long at these levels. Right up to this pivot high target. Now one other thing I want to show you is, let's go down to the 4-hour chart, is that last week there was a HNS that formed here. Okay. Now considering this HNS target height is roughly around that weekly second trend line we were talking about. Okay, so it's around this 34 to 35 area. Let's go back to the weekly chart. Then that's roughly along this trend line right here. Okay, so of course it could form on this one also, but I think there's a higher probability that price could possibly pull back here. But it doesn't really matter which one it bounces off of. Okay, and we'll still be targeting this pivot high. Okay, so let's go on to the NZD USD. Okay, so this is a weekly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, fundamentally, this entire move right here, starting from this range, is based on momentum. Okay, so we're looking for a short right back down to this level right here in the long term. Okay, however, in the short term, because of recent price action, there seems to be a lot more momentum left in this move. So in the long term, we're short bias right down to this level right here. But in the short term, we're long biased right up to this pivot right here. Okay. All right, so let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Now last week, there was a double top that formed here. But to me, this double top is fake. Thus, I'm pretty sure it won't go its target height, which is here to here. Okay, so what we're targeting is this pivot high right here. Okay, now some entry levels we're looking at. This is a daily chart. It's from this pivot to this pivot right here. Or this pivot to this pivot right here. Now price is respecting both of these at this point. Now we want price to respect these trend lines with compact price action. So possibly we could get a long right up to this pivot high again. Now one thing to keep in mind in terms of this setup is that there is a strong possibility that this just might really bounce off these levels really fast without making this compact price action. Okay, so if there's a strong setup here, it might be a very quick move up. Okay, but we'll just have to see about that. Okay, so that's it for this week's weekly forecast. I hope you guys have a great week, and thanks for watching, guys. Okay, bye.